Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2020 show. We are once again live from our recording from the Grant King race shops, and you can see in the background some of the equipment in here where they do work. We have a rather sad announcement to you race fans that have been around for a while, and you know the young man that was called Ralphie the Racer, Ralph Liguori, passed away yesterday. He spent the last 2+ years in a nursing home, and his wife Jane hadn't seen him since February because in Florida they locked down nursing homes, so she couldn't get in. And he passed away from COVID-19. The nursing home was rabid with it, and he got it, and it caused his loss. The last time she saw him in February, she said, "You'll enjoy this one." I walked in the room and he said, "Hey, I raced last night." She said, "Ralph, you've been here over 2 years." "I raced last night." Okay, so she went out and she was doing a little rehab for her own surgery, came back in the room and he said, "I raced." She went out to the nurses station to talk to the nurses, and they said, "How did he finish?" She said, "I don't know, I didn't ask." She went back in the room and said, How did you finish?" She said, "Third." So Ralphie was racing to the end. This program is brought to you, as always, by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT INDYCAR Series, SVRA, and McGilvery's Pub and Eatery and Speedway. If you have a problem with your computer, which I seem to have a history of, we have a new computer repair guy. It's A+ Affordable Computer Doctor. Why is he a doctor? Because like in my day, he makes house calls. So give him a call, tell him your problem. If necessary, he can come by. The number is 317-328-0766. You ever wondered what it's like to drive your favorite race car on your favorite track? From dirt track midgets at Chili Bowl to Formula One at Nuremberg Ring. Indy Simulation can put you in the driver's seat of their Sim Experience full motion race simulator. Take your choice of over 160 cars and tracks in iRacing, the same simulation that the professional drivers use to race their real world rivals. Learn new tracks and stay sharp between races. Visit INDYSIM.com. That's INDYSIM.com to book your free demonstration drive. Everybody's favorite doctor's visit, of course, is a dentist, and I recommend the best there is, the Indy Dental Group. In fact, my honey Sharon was there this morning. Dr. Jack Miller, an Indy 500 veteran, and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have one of the top-rated practices in the state. So give them a call, make an appointment. You'll be glad you did. Trust me. The number is 317-846-6125. You want to take a ride in a real Indy car? You can do that through the Indy Racing Experience. You can get a ride in a 2-seater. You'll find out why the guys and gals love driving these things. It's a phenomenal experience. You can go to IndyRacingExperience.com, find a date that'll work for you, and in the promo box, put DK1, you get a 50% discount. Or you can call the office. The number is 317-243-7171. If it's time to renew your insurance for your home, your car, your commercial property, do what most of us have done. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. He's located at 5004 West 16th Street. Give him a call. Tell him what you need, and he'll give you a quote. You'll be surprised. You'll get better coverage for less money. In fact, I just got a new car. We changed insurance companies. He saved me $400 a year. So it can be done, and he does it. His number is 317-248-0070. That's VP Insurance and Speedway. 317-428-0070. Have you an interest in vintage cars or Trans Am? It's coming back. I highly recommend you go to www.svra.com and subscribe to Speed Tour magazine. Top class unit, and you'll get some great stories and great car photographs that are out of this world, and it'll tell you when you're in the venue where best to go. So check it out. That's svra.com, Speed Tour magazine. While you're there, click on the schedule and see where they're going to be performing next, and you're going to want to be there. Do you have a vintage car? Would you like one? Would you like to get one restored? Grant King Shop can take care of that. Give them a call. Tell them what you got, what you need. The number is 317-820-3595. And if you're interested in taking a tour and the place has been completely redone, there's all new cars here, give them a call, make a reservation to come down here because they have other businesses and they got to know you're coming. Again, the number is 317-820-3595. My guest today is a two-pronged guest. One is a broadcaster from NBC. He's been doing INDYCAR. He does sports cars. And I'm not sure but what he hasn't done some other off-the-wall things like maybe the Westminster Dog Show. I don't know. We're going to find out. He's been a broadcaster for many years. He works for NBC. I want to welcome Mr. Kevin Lee, and joining Kevin is his son Jackson, who is now strapped into cars. And this past week, which we'll find out about, he's done quite well. Kevin, you have been in the broadcasting for quite a number of years. When you started out, when you went to college and got a degree, what was your goal? Did you want to get into television broadcasting, or did you just take journalism or whatever, and you got a job in television?
I think I was mostly just interested in having some sort of a broadcasting job, and I was open to whatever. Probably my first desire, though, and it still is play-by-play, whether it's radio or television. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to call games, and my original plan was to be a baseball announcer. And I had even looked into internship while I was in college, working with a minor league team, maybe getting on the air a little bit. But then the chance to work at WIBC came about. And then after I went through the internship, I worked and did play-by-play at a little station in Newcastle, but I still had kind of an eye on eventually doing minor league baseball. But I had a pretty good job. I was getting good experience doing basketball, football, baseball. I hosted a talk show. I was a disc jockey. And then WIBC hired me full-time, and I was doing post-game for the Pacers and the Colts, covering professional sports, filling in as a talk show host, and just kind of kept elevating. And it very soon got to the point where I would have already had to take a pretty good pay cut and uproot my life a little bit to become a minor league announcer with no guarantee that I ever make more than 18 grand a year. So that didn't happen. And then I've just kind of found my way into play-by-play. And with that, found my way into motorsports, working in Indianapolis. And that was my first assignment as an intern, was covering the Indianapolis 500. Eventually, I worked my way onto the Speedway Radio Network and did radio for a few years. And then when Comcast took over in 2009, some of the INDYCAR rights, I started working with them and then became full-time with Comcast, which became NBCSN in 2011. And it's kind of gone from there. And I've done some basketball for NBCSN. I've done a little bit of NASCAR. I've done NFL play-by-play and college basketball play-by-play with Westwood One, which is the national radio network, and some college basketball with Big Ten Network. So if you've got a network, I've probably worked for it at some point.
Where did you graduate from, and what was your degree in?
From Ball State University, and it was in telecommunications. So this was kind of the idea of what I wanted to do from when I was 13 or 14. I played sports growing up and played baseball through high school, but I knew I was never going to be a professional athlete, so I just wanted to stay around the game. And my high school, Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis, had a radio station, so I started calling games when I was a sophomore in high school. So I was a little bit ahead of some other kids in college in that I already had a pretty good resume tape and a lot of experience by the time I got to college.
Did you ever involve yourself in driving a race car or working on one, or you've always been in the media side?
And to be honest, I did not grow up with a racing background. I was a fan of the Indianapolis 500 and especially a fan of the radio broadcast, but I was not a racing diehard. I've always been honest about that. I was consumed by football as a little kid, then basketball, and then especially baseball. And I really became exposed to racing when I started working at the track. And then in many ways, what got me paying attention more was the formation of the Indy Racing League, because I was captivated by those oval races in the late 90s, in 96, 97, 98 at Texas and Chicagoland and everywhere else. So that's when I started watching and really paying attention more than just the Indy 500. So the only driving I've done is that Firestone sent me to the Bridgestone Academy driving kind of cars like what he drives now, basically a Skip Barber type car up in Mosport. I did that for a day. It went fine, but I didn't miss my calling. And I think in an arrive and drive thing, I did a day in a midget out of the speedrome, but I never had any thought to be able to drive a race car. So this mostly comes from my wife's side of the family, is how he got into this.
Now, sitting next to you is your son Jackson, who is now strapping himself into a car. I talked to you last year about it, and you said, yeah, he was getting started, and you had some announcements upcoming. How is his career going to date? Well, let him ask.
Exactly.
How is your career going to date? Where did you start, and where are you today?
Like my dad mentioned earlier, I got my motivation for racing from my mom's side. They all ran midget and sprint cars and a little bit of go-karts. And I remember I went to one of my cousin's sprint car races back when I was really young and just thinking that's what I wanted to do. So even though I'm on the Formula car side of racing and INDYCAR is the main goal, I didn't get my start on road course side. I started in quarter midgets and on short oval stuff. So I did that until I was about 11. And once I was at kind of that age, I had realized that if I wanted any chance of being an INDYCAR driver, I needed to learn road courses and I needed to get into go-karts so I could really learn that side of racing. So 11 or 12, I got into go-karts, did that for a while. And just last year, I started racing Formula cars in the Lucas Oil School of Racing. I did their Karts to Cars scholarship shootout and ended up placing 4th, which got me a free weekend. So we did the full season of that last year, and I did pretty well. I finished 4th, won a few races, was fighting for podiums each weekend. And now this year I moved into the Formula Race Promotions F1600 series where I've been racing. And we've been doing pretty good this year. The Rice race, my team has been giving me really good cars, and I've been able to capitalize on that. And I've been able to compete for podiums each weekend. And just last weekend, I was able to get my second win of the season at VIR.
Who was your sponsor? I know besides the guy sitting next to you and your mother who was somewhere else.
Luckily, I'm not the primary sponsor this year, so that's good. I've been eclipsed a little bit because I've done all I can.
Yeah, this season has been big thanks. A huge part of it came from Tanemic and Indiana Coating Specialists. They're my primary sponsor this season, but I've got help from a lot of other people. To name a few, I've got Rising Star Racing, who's been a big help, and Caldwell Subways and Caldwell Realty have been a big help throughout my whole career. And then I've got some other small companies that help us out. Cabin Coffee of Avon, BSA, Hinchman Racewear has always helped me out with race suits. Belt Helmets has always been really good to me, and Muller Printing has just helped us out with our graphics this year. So big thanks to all of them. They've been really helpful in getting me going and keeping me doing what I really love to do.
And you mentioned Indy Simulation as a sponsor. Kerry Bettenhausen has allowed him to train, and he's been coaching some other drivers on Kerry's sims at Indy Simulation, so they've been a good partner too.
And I talked to Kerry last week, and he mentioned that you do spend a lot of time up there, and he does instruct. He told me that, and I was getting to that, but you jump-started me, so that's fine. What is your mother and her family's connection? Did she drive as a young gal, or who drove in her family?
My mom didn't drive at all. She's always been a big race fan, but her brothers and my grandpa, her dad, they all ran sprint cars and they did go-karts, and they really introduced me to the racing side of it, but my mom herself did never race.
So probably my brother-in-law, Steve Emmel, is the one that did the most racing. I know he was he ran for some pretty decent teams in the late 80s, early 90s. And so when my wife was in high school, we're basically the same age as Jeff Gordon. So she and her sister, they were hanging out with Jeff because he hung out with the other kids as he was a kid driving. So that's kind of the era that they were racing in.
So your mother doesn't get nervous and pace and run and hide in a motorhome when you get into a car?
Oh, she definitely gets nervous, but she's been around it for a while, so she understands that that's just part of racing, but she enjoys it.
And you have indicated that your goal is to get to the 16th in Georgetown at some point in time.
Yep.
I suppose I could ask Kevin this. Are you guys looking, your next move would be into the Road to Indy program?
You can answer it.
Yeah, well, it's going to take a lot of help, but that's where I want to go. I've been planning on trying to get to the Road to Indy right around now for the past few years. So I think if we can land a ride in there next year, that would be really good.
I would say our plan is to be patient and make each move count. I think we have some advantages maybe over some other parents that I've been around it enough, and I know enough people to give me good advice. So I've essentially been working on this, even though I wasn't planning on working on this for the last 15 years, to know what to do and what not to do. And I think too many times people rush their kids up through the system because they want to be at the highest level they absolutely can be, and then they don't do well, and their partners or maybe even the family who's paying for it, which is usually the case, they lose interest. I think you need to be able to run at the front in each series you're at. We had a lot of people last year trying to tell us to run at USF 2000 this year. We didn't have the funding to be able to do that, so it was an easy decision. But even if we did, I wanted him to run F1600 this year because I have enough people that I trust tell me, you'll really learn car control, you'll learn how to drive. And then when you get to USF 2000, hopefully in another year, you won't finish 18th every week and need a second year before you can compete. You might actually be able to run up front almost immediately. So that's kind of the path. We think he's on trajectory skill-wise to be able to compete at that level next year. Now we just have to add some more partners to be able to fund that, because that's where it starts getting really, really expensive from my perspective.
And I will throw this in, having interviewed, since I've been doing this for about 60 years, some young up-and-coming drivers, and most of the time you ask a question and they hesitate to answer. If they answer, it has nothing to do with what you asked. Jackson seems to be to take a little from you and answers the questions, and that is, as Kevin, as you know, hugely important, because many of the sponsors you have, they want you to be a spokesman. And if you can't talk, you're not worth a hoot. And you're able to talk about what you're doing, where you're going, your goals, without hesitation, which I think is a huge plus in your column when you talk to sponsors. When they ask you, can you represent us? Yes. Could you be a personal appearances for us? Yes, because you can do it. It sounds, from what I'm listening, and it's the first time I've talked to you, it wouldn't be a problem for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Dad has definitely preached to me from a young age that if I wanted to be a race car driver, that I'm going to need to learn how to be a spokesman, as you said, and I'm going to need to learn how to be able to represent the brands who want to help me and really be able to master the media side of racing, or else I'm going to have no chance.
And part of my motivation for paying for this up to this point, because it's frankly beyond the means that we have to be able to do this. So the partners have really helped and kept him on the track. But paying what we do, part of the motivation has been, and I've told other young drivers this, you're getting life skills. Most of these young drivers in USF 2000 are not going to make a living in IndyCar. They may not make it, but what they're getting is going to lead to them being successful in life. If you can talk, if you can present, you can be employable, and you can at least sell something. So even if it doesn't work out the way we hope, I think he's going to gain something that is going to work well later in life.
And he'll be obviously able to sell himself, and that's absolutely crucial. As you know, Kevin, when somebody comes in, talk about a job, if you can't sell yourself, you're dead. And it sounds
Exactly.
like he's able to talk and represent. And something that's bothered me over the years, and I've been around since 1964, and I've said this to drivers throughout the years, you need to have a resume and be able to, show that you can represent. I don't need a resume. Oh, yes, you do. Because today, especially, there's so many other sports. You're just another sport. And to be able to talk and represent a company, I think from what I've listened to in the last 10 or 15 minutes, that won't be a problem for Jackson. He'll be able to handle that part of it. And I've also been thinking.
It's definitely a combination.
Oh, yeah. And I think I've told young kids this, you need to get a sponsor and get them to start with you and grow with you. They can get in for, 5 or 10,000 the first year, but as you they grow with you. So by the time you got to Indianapolis, you've proven yourself, and you've, helped them sell and network for themselves, so they come with you. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And that's kind of where we think we have a chance to move forward. So we were fortunate enough to meet someone named Mike Land, who is the Tnemec representative in Indiana. Tnemec they do industrial coating, so water towers or big buildings, hospitals, things like that. They're industrial painting, coverings, and things like that. He operates Indiana Coating Specialists, so he's the local branch. So what we're trying to find for him is basically B2B. That's how a lot of motorsports works now, is yes, he's paying us, and what we're trying to do is find him more business, and he's going to be more than happy to invest back in Jackson because, frankly, he's doing this. He's investing in Jackson. yes, we're trying to get him a return on investment and some more business, and we've introduced him to a couple of architecture firms and so forth. But he's doing this because he believes that Jackson has some ability and just needs some help to get to the next level. But we can make this bigger by really helping him find more business. And maybe, you know, the goal is to get involved with Tnemec on the national level as well. That's where we've got a chance, along with some other partners, to be able to keep moving up when the money gets pretty serious, and being able to entertain partners at the racetrack. And when you start running on IndyCar weekends, and because frankly of my connections, I think I can introduce our partners to some people they otherwise wouldn't meet and just give them a great experience. You see that at the racetrack. That's a lot of what racing sponsorship is about, bringing the CEO and his friends or clients out to the track. And there's more access in motorsports than there is in any other sport.
Certainly in IndyCar there is, without any question. If you recall, when Formula One come in here, you almost had to have a presidential seal just to get into the garage area. And I've mentioned this a number of times. A company that sponsored me some years back, and I can't remember the driver, well known. He might have been a world champion. They sponsored, paid $30 million. They never met him, never made an appearance for him, never did anything. But they had their name on the rear wing on the end plate. So, do you, as you've moved up, Jackson, have you found the cars, as you move up, the cars meeting are a little more difficult to drive, so you need to learn them and learn how to feel them and how to react to them?
So it's definitely been a big learning curve coming from go-karts up into race cars. And I'm still at a fairly low horsepower, low speed car in reference to other Formula cars. But it's definitely been a big learning curve to get into karts to karting, or from karting to Formula cars. But I think at this low power level, I think it's still very difficult to be able to manage with the low power, also the low grip, and being able to control the car you have and take advantage of what little power comes with the car. And if you can keep as much momentum going and keep as much horsepower and use as much of it as possible, then it really makes it easier to be successful when you get into the higher horsepower cars with higher grip levels, so that you've got that experience behind you and it feels more comfortable than if you just jump into a high power car without the experience of being able to control it in a car without lower grip before that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things you find as you move up, that you learn how to control the car by the seat of your pants. You learn what you feel it,
Exactly.
You know what it's doing, you can react to it. Have you tested a USF 2000 car yet?
I have not yet, and that all depends on how our funding goes this year, but we plan on doing it fairly soon, before the end of the year.
Kevin, how much has the COVID-19 affected your business, be it the television and radio and so forth? It's obviously knocked you down a little bit, or a lot for that matter.
My business was not good for a little while, but I'm more fortunate than others. So the basketball, football, baseball announcers, they haven't been doing anything at all. And it all depends on the situation. So, a play-by-play guy that works for a team, they're still getting paid. Maybe they took a percentage cut. So that's been okay. But it's freelancers, not just in broadcasting, but anyone that freelances, as they say, the gig economy, anyone that works in entertainment, it's been really, really difficult. I'm just lucky that I'm a freelancer in motorsports where, yeah, we had a rough few months there, but at least we're racing. NASCAR has been back for a while. INDYCAR has started up again, sports cars. I've been doing nothing but sports cars here, and I'll start doing INDYCAR racing again. Mid-Ohio will be my first INDYCAR race of the year, and then everything through the Indianapolis 500. But it's all still kind of TBD. So it's not been particularly good, but it could have been a lot worse. And I have more confidence that motorsports is mostly going to continue throughout the year because it's outdoors. There's more separation involved. But if I was basing and banking on, for example, NBA games happening and only getting paid if they happen through the end of the year, I'd be a little more worried about that because it's going to take a little less, I think, to shut them down than it is motorsports. NASCAR has kind of started the lead. It's been really impressive what they've been able to do to operate in a safe manner, a minimalist manner, to spend as little money as possible just to keep going, keep the teams in business. And that's what all motorsports groups, teams, leagues, and series need right now.
Are you under contract with NBC, or do they call you and say, how about doing this weekend's race?
So I'm under contract, but I'm essentially a contractor. So I'm freelance. And I'll say this, NBC has gone above and beyond from what they are required to do for me. They're not required to do anything for me. So I have even a stronger affinity for my relationship with NBC. But that also has allowed me to freelance. I've done some work for Fox on occasion in the last few years. And as I mentioned, Westwood One radio and other things. So there are pluses and minuses to that I have the ability to do other things. The minus is when staffing starts getting shorted or something happens, some of the others are on salary, so they're getting paid no matter what, and I'm not. But again, they've treated me fantastically. And, I may revisit the way this works in the future. I fired my agent, which was me, and I hired a real representation firm. So what I told them is first is just get me the best deal you can with NBC. And if it's exclusive and I can't freelance, I'm fine with that because NBC is where I want to be.
Now, it was announced, I got notification and posted it up, I think, on Monday, that the 50% for the 500 is now down to 25%. What do you think effect that will have on the race going forward, if any?
Well, it makes me feel even more confident that we're going to have an event. I did have a fear, and I wasn't to the point where I thought it was going to be canceled any day or they were going to say no fans. But when you see, and more importantly, when others outside of motorsports see that number of potentially 175,000 people, I had real concerns that someone that has no interest or care about motorsports was going to attach to that and say, how can you do this? This is irresponsible, and potentially go after sponsors that are associated with INDYCAR or the teams. And they might have the ability through public pressure to shut the thing down. So getting it to 25% sounds like much more of a feasible number. And then if people really do look into it, of how massive this facility is at 60, 70, 80,000 people, that's the same as bringing in 1,000 people into Bankers Life Fieldhouse where the Pacers play when you talk about spreading out. So I think this is a very workable plan. And it worked out is that they did the survey and found out how many people actually plan on coming that had bought tickets, and it was less than 25%. So they're not telling anyone who's purchased a ticket, you can't come, you're disinvited. Everyone that bought a ticket that feels comfortable coming in this circumstance is going to be able to come to the 500.
Well, I know from talking with several people that had 4, 8, and 10 tickets, they got cut in half. And in one case, I know of a little less than half, but and they're suggesting that those of us over 60 stay home. Well, I certainly hope I can hide under the table at the media center, if nothing else, because I've been coming here since, as I said, since 1964. I sure hate to miss one. But
Yeah.
That being said, if that's what the world calls for, I know when NASCAR was here, they had 8 from the media around the world. There was only 8 there. So I don't know what
Wow.
their plan is. I haven't asked coming forward what's going to happen. Have you watched any baseball games that actually played starting last week or this weekend? Or
I have.
Have you? Did you
I've
find
even watched some of the Korean games. It's on in the morning, and I love baseball. And it's just background noise. I'm a Cubs fan, so I will pay closer attention to that. So I've watched a couple of the White Sox-Cubs exhibition games, and I've had some of the others on. So I'm just happy to have sports back on.
Well, I found it interesting. I tuned one in. I think it was San Francisco was playing in the stands. They have the sheets over them with people painted on them. There's nobody there, and somebody gets a hit and you hear the cheering going on. I wonder what that's like for the ball players playing in front of nobody and hear cheering when something, it's got to be an unusual circumstance, but it is what it is. I assume we'll get them increase in viewership, which is also important for the sponsors of the programming, obviously. What have you had a chance to tour the Speedway since Roger has taken over and started revamping?
I have not. I was on Brickyard weekend doing the sports car race at Daytona, So I wasn't involved at all. You know, I suppose I could go over and ask for a tour, but kind of my thought was I don't want to inconvenience anyone. And I know they're trying to be as responsible as they can be and have as little contact as possible. So I'll wait until it opens up for the Indy 500 in August. And I'm excited about it. I've heard about the extra pavement and the upgraded bathroom facilities. I'm hoping they pave the TV lot. Last I heard, it was still gravel. So I'm hoping that gets paved because it floods pretty good there in the TV compound. I can't wait to see the video boards and just giving people more access to what's going on. I think the Pagoda Plaza area has big-time possibilities for being able to do other things. You know, I can envision at some point that they host events for fans, for viewing parties there, for other IndyCar races where, you know, gather IndyCar fans from Indianapolis, come out to the Speedway, and they can have some people that are based in Indianapolis hosting, doing Q&As. You know, I think there's the ability for more corporate events. They already do some. And then just the entertainment aspect from concerts. I love what I've heard so far from Roger Penske and his group to maximize the possibilities for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, because that will help the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, and you're right. And I am extremely impressed with what I've heard from some of the people that when he's in town, which is almost every week, if not every week, he has a meeting of the staff. And he may be talking about selling pretzels in the corner, and here's sitting across from him, and it happens to be the head of the media division. And they're talking about something that has nothing to do with that, but they'll ask, what do you think? He asks everybody. He wants to know what everybody thinks, because he's smart enough to know you never know whether an idea will pop up. It doesn't
That's
have to be from the pretzel division. It could be from somewhere else. So I'm impressed with what he's done, what he's doing. He hasn't slowed down with this problem we're going through. He's gone forward. So stuff he was going to maybe do next year is being done now, because there's nobody there. And I think it's a great facility. I agree with you. Concerts. They could bring in some big name concerts, because Lord knows they got enough room to put 100,000 people easy and put on some good shows. I think it's a good idea. I think Roger's the right guy. In fact, I just read a thing yesterday. He's looking at the potential to buy Iowa.
Yes, which is great for IndyCar, because there have been concerns about the future of that. NASCAR owns that track at this point, and it sounds like they've decided that Iowa's not getting a cup race. And NASCAR's schedule is going to be significantly reconfigured next year. I don't know all the details, but there have been a lot of whispers that it's going to be a big shakeup between next year and the year after. We've already heard that, Nashville Super Speedway is going to get a cup race next year, and I think there are going to be other changes. Don't be surprised if Road America gets a cup race. So that means they're going away from somewhere, and places like Iowa that were trying to get a cup race, unfortunately, aren't going to be able to get one. So there was a fear that Iowa might just go away and be turned into something else, and that would be a shame, because I think it's perfect for IndyCar. It's the right size facility. You have hardcore fans in that area, and the racing has been great. So if he wants to take that over, I'm all for it, because we really need that track on the IndyCar schedule.
I think that track and getting Richmond back on the schedule and utilize it like it was this year but got canceled. And Jackson, did you happen to see the IndyCar race? The end of the second one?
Yes, I did. And I thought both races were really good. I was able to catch the end of them from my hotel room at VIR. But I always really enjoyed when the IndyCars have gone to Iowa. It's one of my favorites of the ovals. So I think it would be really good if we're able to continue to run there.
And he's got a link to Joseph Newgarden as well. One of the people that we should mention that's really helped him is Art Wilmus with Rising Star Racing, and Joseph was kind of the original model for that. Joseph had already reached Indy Lights and was working in the IndyCar when Art started this program as a way to help aspiring drivers, and there have been quite a few through the years. Spencer Pigot is probably the other one that's had the most success, and Art still works with Joseph and Spencer on outside marketing deals. So he started a new program last year for lower level people like Jackson called First Gear, and he's the first and only driver in that program right now. So, and by the way, Spencer Pigot was back in a car. He won in class in the race that I called at Sebring in a late call up to LMP2, and Spencer will be in the Indy 500 this year, and he was fantastic on the road course race with Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan. So I'm hoping he gets more opportunities.
Yeah, I noticed that. I saw his name on there, and I thought, Piggott, there can't be but one driving race car. And my question to Jackson was, if you heard the end of the race when they interviewed Joseph when he got out of the car, he said if there's anything he'd like to see, yeah, about 10 more ovals like this. Yeah. So you're liking ovals. He's with you on that one. And I
was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had to be in a car the next day, so I shut it off once the checkered flag waved. But yeah, I agree with Joseph. I'd really like to see some more ovals.
Strange thing about it, a lot of drivers say that, but whenever I bring it up, wow, we divide it equally. Oh yeah, IndyCar was always ovals, and I think the majority, a good number of fans, like to watch the oval racing. But also they tell me, well, you look at a road course like Road America, or you look at the Mid Ohio or St. Petersburg. Well, yeah, if you go to St. Petersburg, it's cold up here. And you got Mid Ohio, they'll come there to watch something if they run RC cars. So I think I'd like to see some ovals added myself.
You know, the challenge has just been to make it work economically. And the advantage that street courses and even road courses have is that it's 3 days of constant action. And these tracks and promoters get people to come in on Friday and Saturday. Right. You know, Road America or Mid Ohio on Friday, we see 5, 10, 15,000 people there often. How many people do you see at any of these oval tracks the day before the race? It's in the hundreds. It's friends and family, which goes back to what Roger said about a doubleheader idea. And now that I know that he's interested in buying the track, and now that we know that IndyCar actually was the promoter for this Iowa race, because up until a week ago, I didn't know that. So now it's making more sense why he's a proponent for doubleheaders at a place like Iowa, because that's what these oval tracks need. They need people coming 2 or 3 days in a row, not just on race day. That's what Long Beach has. You know, Long Beach has whatever it is, 50,000 on race day, but they've got 40,000 on Saturday, 30,000 on Friday. That all adds up.
Yeah, well, and I agree. One thing that's bothering me, Kevin, is with the Indy Lights shutting down for the 2020 season, the 2 lower series are not getting any coverage at all. Yeah. And I think that's a shame, because these kids need to be known. So when I do the program live, which I haven't done since February or March, I guess, I like to bring these young kids from those series in, so people know who they are, learn a little bit about them. So when they make the move, they say, oh, I remember seeing him or hearing him or whatever it is. So I think they're missing out, and it's too bad.
Luckily, they're still on the weekends with IndyCar, sort of. You know, I know at Road America, they were there, Thursday, Friday. IndyCar was there on Saturday and Sunday, and that's just the nature of the condensed schedule. And the way I understand it with Indy Lights, one of the reasons why it was shut down was, well, one, you know, all businesses are facing financial peril right now, so some were cutting their support of some of the drivers. So instead of 9 or 10, it was looking like 6 or 7, which is pretty shaky. And even then, I think there was some concerns that these partners for the drivers had been promised some television time, and there wasn't room for the Indy Lights races on the same day as the IndyCar races. And if you put them on Thursday, then it just becomes cost prohibitive to still do the television broadcast because the cameras aren't set up yet. And then you've got to pay everybody extra to come in and do that. And if you can't provide TV as promised, then the sponsors may come back and say, well, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. I'm out. And then all of a sudden you've got 2 cars competing. So it's terrible, but it probably was the only option under these extreme once in 100 years circumstances.
But Roger has indicated that he's pushing now, as you know, I'm sure. He wants IndyCar teams to either own a team or associate with one to help build the series back. And I think that's a good idea. I thought about that a few years ago and I got laughed at. But that to me makes sense. And some of the teams did initially do it, but then they've kind of tailed off a little bit. But I think that would certainly help the car counts for sure.
They need incentives. There needs to be a reason to help out your IndyCar program. There have been some. But, one of the teams that never had any involvement is Roger Penske's team. And now he has a different perspective, trying to look out for the greater good. And I understand, by the way, why Roger never had an Indy Lights team, because he was never, ever going to hire a driver directly from Indy Lights. His minor league development program, it's all the other teams. Yeah. He just lets them, like Joseph Newgarden, get experience with other teams. And then when he feels like they're ready to compete for a championship, he hires them. Joseph from Sarah Fisher and Ed Carpenter's team, and, Simon Pagino from Schmidt-Peterson, and the list goes on and on. But now that he understands, okay, maybe it doesn't fit my team's plans the best, but for the greater good, we're going to align with someone, even if we don't think there's a path directly from that team up to Team Penske.
Yeah, but if you look at the starting field, I believe it was last year or the year before, 23 of the 33 starters came through lights at one time or another. So it does do what it's supposed to do, and that's the whole idea. And I think Dan has done a great job with that.
And I'll share one of Townsend Bell's ideas that he's had for several years that they have put into effect just a little bit. But his idea essentially was you have to finish top 3 in Indy Lights to receive an INDYCAR license, with some opportunities available to skip that. For example, if you come straight from Cup, or if you come from Formula One like Max Chilton did, you could still get an INDYCAR license, but something along those lines. I don't know if it has to be so hard and fast as top 3, but and the challenge is teams need funded drivers, but it's not in everyone's best interest for a driver to go from GP3 or F3 in Europe directly to INDYCAR because they can bring a check for $8 million. What we really want them doing is for the first year bringing that check for $1 million, doing Indy Lights, and then in one more year coming to INDYCAR. So something like that I think would be desired to pretty much force everyone, unless they've been in Formula One, or maybe if they've won the GP2 championship, that they need to spend some time in Indy Lights.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and I think if there's a way to do it and make it successful, Roger will find it, and Roger will do it. Come hell or high water, he wants to succeed. And I mentioned when he had the press conference announcing his purchase, he and Tony and Mark, and I said, I first met you in 1956 at Meadowdale Raceway outside of Chicago. And he said, I don't remember much of that. I said, well, I don't remember much about it either, except at the time you could get into the pit area. Nobody stopped anybody from anything. And I was so impressed with his team and how clean it was and how polished and how pressed the driver's suits was. And his suit was sparkling clean. And I went up and just introduced myself, shook his hand. I mean, he wouldn't remember me, and I wouldn't expect him to. But from the first time I ever saw him, he was a class act. He did everything clean, polished, and obviously that works because he's been awfully successful. Well, what's your next event, Kevin?
I'll be doing the INDYCAR race at Mid-Ohio in the pits for that one. And then I think I will host the practice sessions leading up to the 500 from the booth with Townsend on NBC Gold, and then back in the pits for the weekend for qualifying and for the Indy 500. So we're kind of going a few weeks at a time, but I guess it's possible it's still a little bit TBD for the Road America IMSA race the weekend after next. I'm not on the schedule, but I guess there's a chance that I may be added to it. So I'm just kind of on standby.
And Jackson, where do you go next? What's your next event?
I will be going to Summit Point next month in Virginia, which is one of my favorite tracks. So we were quick there last year, and I had a lot of fun.
How many more events have you got to the end of the season?
So right now there are, I believe, 3 more on the schedule. We have Summit Point, Road Atlanta, and
they go back to Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, yeah, we go to Pittsburgh a second time.
And we may do the SCCA runoffs at Road America. We've been encouraged by our team to do that. So it's kind of a last-minute thing. His driver, the team that he drives for, Rice Race, Misha Goikberg, who drives top-level sports cars, still comes down and runs these cars for our team every once in a while. And he was planning on doing the June sprints in Jackson's car. And Misha couldn't get out of Canada. That's where he lives. So our owner called and said, hey, we were going to test somewhere anyways. That got canceled. Why don't you do this? And he did. And he finished second. So that worked out really well. So now he's qualified for the runoff. So we're thinking about adding that to the program in early October. It just kind of depends on well, how much money Dad has and how many events he works between now and then, or if we find more partners.
Well, I'm sure that will happen, and I think you have. Again, I just met him today. I've heard about him. I've talked with you about how he's doing and so forth a couple of times, but just listening to him now, his attitude and his able to talk and explain and just not say yes and no, which I try to ask questions. You got to say more than yes and no. It's impressed me because I've had a lot of drivers and some of them have been series champions. The first time I talked to them, I couldn't get them to tell me their name. Now, of course, that's changed. But he has been able to answer the questions and do it very well. And I think he's got a good future. And from what I've seen and what I've heard today, his driving ability is going to get him there. And his ability to communicate will get him there. So he's got two things in his pocket. Wish him nothing but the best.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Very nice of you to say. Thank you, Don.
And I may warn you at some time, we're planning on going back to McGilvery's at some point in time. Don't know when, but if and when we do, I may call you again. You got some time, you come in on a Tuesday night and we'll sit down and talk. People get to see who you are.
All right.
In fact, we'll bring the both of you in. I know your dad will talk plenty. That's not a problem.
Can he get into McGilvery's?
With you there, yes.
With me? Okay.
Yeah. As long as you're this guiding light, yes, you can. All right. I want to thank you for your time, Kevin, and we'll be listening to you at Mid-Ohio. I have NBC Gold, so I'll get to listen to you all day long whenever they're on.
Nice.
Jackson, we wish you nothing but the best, and we look forward to talking to you again with some more successes, and maybe you win a big race, you can bring the trophy with you.
All right.
Okay. My guests have been Kevin Lee and his son, Jackson, who is a current race driver, and Kevin, of course, is with NBC Sports. We have a couple of more of these put together. People are scheduled to do it. So when we can get in here and get them done, we'll get them and they'll be on air. Until this time, next time, Don Kay saying thanks for watching. Till the next time, goodbye.